لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن نبينا محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Inshallah, in today's Hanafa, we will speak a little bit about today's Hanafa will speak about the life of Imam Ahmed bin Hanbal rahimahullah ta'ala. Imam Ahmed rahimahullah, he is known as Imam Ahlul Sunnah. If someone says Imam Ahlul Sunnah, the Imam for the people of the Sunnah that follow the Sunnah, then it is Imam Ahmed bin Hanbal that comes to mind. This great Imam, the other scholars in Islam, they said that two people stood up for Islam at a critical moment. Two people stood up for Islam at a very critical moment. And if it hadn't been for the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then for them standing up at this critical moment, the religion of Islam would not have been the same way that we know it today. And these two people, actually let me pose it as a question to make it a little bit more interactive. Does anyone know who these two individuals are? Have you ever come across this statement before? That two people who stood up for the religion of Islam and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam at a very critical moment in history. Yes, go ahead.
Imam Ahmed and Imam Shafi'i, I think.
Imam Ahmed bin Hanbal, yes, it is one, but Imam Shafi'i is not usually mentioned as the other one. So have we come across it before?
Also Ibn Taymiyyah.
Ibn Taymiyyah is a good guess. But there is someone else, someone other than that. Yes?
The uncle of the Prophet?
The uncle of the Prophet. We're getting close, but not quite. Anyone at the back? Ahmed, have you come across it before? Yes?
Maybe Sayyidina Bilal.
We're very close. We're in that era. Something important had happened. Very close, same era, but not quite. Hamza is definitely did a lot for the religion, but not quite. Yes. Now we're getting a little bit distant. Let us go back to that era. Sorry? Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu. And do you know why these two, what were the critical things that they faced? They faced two crises during their time that separated them. Yes?
Imam Ahmad, I think he was against the Bataniya, I think, or something like that, and he gets punished for that because he saw that he is making something wrong in the religion, and he stand up to his
the fitna that happened during the time of Ahmed bin Hanbal, and we'll explain it more in detail, many of the ulama, they had to go with the statement of the Mu'tazila, a group, a sect within the religion, where they said, amongst other things, they believed in that the Quran was created. When the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, we say the Quran is not created, it is the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Imam Ahmed bin Hanbal, he stood firm during that fitna and he was punished. He was punished severely. And then the other person, who was Abu Bakr as-Siddiq,
when the people who the tribe around Makkah and Medina who refused to pay the zakat.
yes. So at the time of the death of the Prophet ﷺ, the battles of Ridda, when many of the tribes they stopped giving zakat to the Prophet to the Muslims at that time, and their reason behind it was that they said we used to give the zakat to Muhammad ﷺ, and now Muhammad ﷺ he's passed away. So we will not give any zakat, but we will do the rest of the religion. We will fast, we will pray, and so on. But Abu Bakr as-Siddiq would not have it. And he said, whoever separates the salah from the zakat, I will fight such a person. Because it was a very hard test. If he had let that slip, then the religion would have been picking and choosing. And other people would have come later on and they would have said, you know what, we don't want to fast in Ramadan, but we want to do the rest. So to set things straight from the beginning, he stood fast, and these two men, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq and Imam Ahmed bin Hanbal, they are people who did a great service to the religion. That is not to say that the other scholars and the other pious people did not. All the people that you mentioned, from Imam Malik to Bilal and the rest of the companions, they all served Islam within their capacity. Imam Ahmed bin Hanbal, he was born, he was younger than Imam Shafi'i by about 14 years. And he ended up becoming the student of Imam Shafi'i, and he benefited from him a lot. And one thing that separated Imam Ahmed bin Hanbal was that Imam Ahmed bin Hanbal, he was a muhaddith. His field, his expertise was hadith. And many of the scholars, they would say that he had memorized alf hadith. And in Arabic, that refers to 1,000,000, if not more, hadith he knew. He was so good at knowing hadith that his own teacher, Imam Shafi'i, would refer to his own student as the expert in the field. So whenever Imam Shafi'i wanted to verify a hadith that he was not certain about, he would consult his own student, Imam Ahmed bin Hanbal, to know whether this hadith, what the scholars, other scholars had said about this hadith. And this highlights a very important point, brothers and sisters. It is that when it comes to the religion and when it comes to knowledge, we should never feel jealous against each other. Imam Malik, rahimahullah, when he met Imam Shafi'i, Imam Shafi'i was a young boy, he could clearly see the blessings that Imam Shafi'i had received, the blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in his sharp memory, his love for knowledge and so on. But that didn't make Imam Malik jealous of Imam Shafi'i. Rather, when he saw that, he poured all the knowledge, everything that he could teach to Imam Shafi'i. And similarly, you see scholar after scholar that this is a trait that the pious people have. They don't let the shaitan start whispering, because it's not a game about ego anymore. It's about serving the religion of Islam. You see this very clearly amongst the prophets of Allah, alayhi salam. We have the story of Musa alayhi salam and his brother Harun, that when Musa alayhi salam is blessed and to become a prophet by Allah, he remembers his brother Harun, and he acknowledges that his brother is better than him in being eloquent in speech. وَأَفْصَحُ مِنِّي لِسَانًا, that he is better in speaking in public than I am. And this is something that many times we lack. If we come in a group setting and we're supposed to work together, then quickly it deteriorates, it becomes, if I'm not spearheading this project, if I am not in charge of this one thing, then I will not support it. And it goes against the clear teachings of the Quran and the Sunnah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. That help and support each other when it comes to prayer. If you see someone else that is engaged in prayer, don't just leave it to that person. You approach that person, you say, brother, sister, how can I help you with this? How can we team up? How can we become partners? Even small things such as cleaning the masjid, right? We see certain brothers and sisters that clean the masjid. And that is great. But once we see them, what do? We just leave them. We say, oh, this brother, he will take care of it. And this sister, they will take care of it. But it is better to at least offer and to help. And by that, you will resemble more these pious people, not just in speech, but also in action. Imam Ahmed bin Hanbal, he is from the tribe of Banu Shayban, and if you trace his ancestry back quite a distance, he aligns his ancestry with the Prophet ﷺ. Not as close as Imam Shafi'i, because Imam Shafi'i is very close to the Prophet ﷺ. But further back, Imam Ahmed bin Hanbal, Banu Shayban, and these Arab tribes, they all go back to Adnan, who is the son of Ismail alayhi salam. When he was born, Imam Ahmed, he was born into a very poor family. He was born into a very poor family. Not only that, but he said in his own words, he said, when I was just a few years old, my father passed away and my grandfather passed away. My father passed away and my grandfather passed away. And I was only left with my mother to raise me. Does this ring any bells? If you look throughout the stories of these great A'immah, you will see that clear pattern. When it comes to Imam Abu Hanifa, we mentioned that his father passed away when he was still a young boy. Imam Malik, similarly. Imam Shafi'i, similarly. And now we have Imam Abu Hanifa. All of these great Imams, they went through a similar story in life. But yet it didn't stop them, it didn't hinder them. And Imam Ahmed's mother, in the same way that Imam Shafi'i's mother before her, she took an oath by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She said, I will pour all my effort, I will put all my effort into this one child, because she only had Ahmed. Ahmed, rahimahullah, he did not have any siblings. He was the only child in the family. And the efforts that the mother put in, it showed fruit very quickly. It is mentioned that Imam Ahmed, rahimahullah, he memorized the Quran when he was 7 years old. He memorized the Quran when he was at the young age of 7. And his mother, she saw that his Arabic, both speaking and writing, it improved considerably. And he went much further along than the students around him. And that encouraged his mother to put even more effort into that young child. Imam Ahmed bin Hanbal, he was born in Baghdad, in Iraq, where he spent a good portion of his time. However, he traveled and he studied with many of the scholars during his time. And what sets his time, apart from the earlier Imam, is that he lived during the golden age of hadith, where you had the likes of Yahya bin Ma'in, you had the likes of Imam al-Bukhari, Imam Muslim, and this was the time where a lot of the ahadith was started being collected in a very serious way. He did not face the same problems that the Imams before him faced, where it was difficult and there was a lot of fabricated hadith, a lot of falsehood being spread. By the time of Imam Ahmed bin Hanbal, the scholars had perfected the knowledge of Jarh and Ta'dil and Ilm al-Hadith and Ilm al-Rijal to such an extent that they were able to grade the ahadith and say this is da'if, this is weak because of these issues, and this is hasan or sahih because of these issues, and so on and so forth. So Imam Ahmed bin Hanbal, he really benefited from the sacrifice and the effort of the earlier scholars. And again, this leads us to another point, and that is that no one makes it by themselves. This is something that we hear being repeated often in secular settings, right? They say, behind every great man there's a great woman, and so on. And there's truth to this, especially when it comes to the religion. If a person becomes an alim, a great scholar, whether a male or female, both a man and a woman, they can become ulama, they can become alim or alima. If you look into their history, you look into their upbringing, their life, after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is gratitude to be shown to the sacrifice of the parents or parents. There is gratitude to be shown to the mashayikh, the scholars that taught that person. And you might look at the big picture and you think, oh yes, this scholar, he should be grateful to his mother, he should be grateful to Imam al-Shafi'i and the other scholars, yes. But on an individual level, it touches on each and every one of us. We are not scholars. But alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed us with a small understanding of the religion. We know that we should pray 5 times a day. We understand the importance and the blessings of being in the masjid, coming and joining the Muslim community. And if you look into each and every one of us, our backstories, you will find a similar pattern. It is because of the sacrifice of our parents. It is because of the sacrifice of those around us. It is the teachers that we were blessed with in our lives that taught us, that would always remind us. So you can look at it on a very big level, or you can look at it on a very on an individual level. Both ways hold true. Now, the trial, the test that Imam Ahmed went through, the scholars, they just refer to it as the fitna, or the mihna, the test. And inshallah, in the upcoming classes, we'll deal with it more in detail. But just to give us an understanding, during this time, alhamdulillah, it was the era of the great scholars, like I mentioned. But at the same time, there was a lot of misguidance, in the sense that people would try to introduce innovations into the religion. And in the beginning, it started on the lower levels. But this seeped through and it reached those in power. And when it reached those in power, because they did not have the same knowledge as many of the scholars. They fell for these misconceptions in the religion. And they started punishing the scholars. And they made it a sort of a test to see which scholar followed their understanding of the religion and which scholar opposed it. And many of the scholars, they did not have that backing or support to stand up, to speak up in the way that is the best way. If you know in Islam that if your life is at stake, if someone is telling you literally, if you don't say this, if you don't say kalimatul kufr, if you don't disbelieve in Allah, then we will kill you. In Islam, in those circumstances, those extreme circumstances, it becomes permissible for you to say whatever the person wants you to say to save yourself, on one condition. And that one condition is that you still have your iman in your heart. So for many scholars, I'm not saying all scholars, but many scholars, they found themselves in that predicament. They found themselves in that situation. And it's easy now, in the comfort of this masjid and sitting here and looking back into history, to judge certain scholars and say, oh, why didn't, if this man was truly a scholar, he would have said the right thing. But when you are there in person, when you're going through such a fitna, and you have not only your own life at stake, but you have the lives of those that you're responsible for at stake, it becomes a different story. The point here is that even if we find some of the scholars opting to say what was the version that was being pushed at that time, this does not take away from their iman, it does not take away from their level of being scholars. Inshallah, perhaps we will conclude on just highlighting what happened when Imam Ahmed refused to go along with what the people in power wanted him to say. He was rounded up with at least one other scholar, and they were taken to be brought in front of a court. And during their travel, they would be humiliated, and they would be put on a donkey, and they would be tied up as if they were criminals. During that journey, the fellow scholar that was with Imam Ahmed, he passed away. He died before being brought to justice. And before he died, noticing that his health was deteriorating, he spoke to Imam Ahmed. And he encouraged Imam Ahmed. He said, today there might just be the two of us, you and I, that are left on this earth, that are standing up for the truth, for the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Tomorrow, I might not be here. And he said, you will be the only one left. Because of that, it is even more important that you stand firm, that you do not cave into the pressure. And fair enough, that is what happened. The other scholar passed away, and Imam Ahmed was left alone to face this enormous pressure. And inshallah, in the upcoming classes, we'll delve more into the outcome of it, touch on more aspects of his life. There are many beautiful points, stories about the interactions between Imam Ahmed with Hanbal, whether it is with the Umara, the leaders, or whether it is with normal people, or whether it is with other scholars. They say when Imam Ahmed bin Hanbal would give the classes, there used to be at least 5,000 people. 5,000 people today doesn't sound a lot, but you have to remember back in the day, there's no social media, you don't know. The Imam shows up in a city and the whole city, 5,000 people come and gather. And out of those 5,000, it is mentioned that only 500 were tulab ilm. They were the students of knowledge, and they would have their books and pens. The rest of them, the 4,500, they would be awam, they would be just general people. And why did they come? They didn't come to write down hadith. They came just to see the scholar. How does the scholar sit? How does he interact with people? And they took from the scholars their mannerism, the way that they dealt and they interacted with people. And this is similar to the way that people benefited from the Prophet ﷺ, that the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, not many out of them would narrate or pass on hadith, because it was a responsibility that not everyone could carry. But at least they would see the Prophet ﷺ, and they would try to implement the little knowledge that they could comprehend and understand. So inshallah, with that we will conclude today's class.